recappers know what this means, don't you? Bless you. Thank you. Oh, Chair, are we good to go? Thank you.
Witches, wizards, elves, muggles, and if anyone's a morning person, not a morning person like me, Death Eaters probably also. Welcome to our session. My name is Shauna McCusker. I'm Director of Criminal Justice, and outside of university, or my day job, I'm a student psychotherapist, and this session is kind of born of a fusion between education and some of the psychotherapy things I've learned. My colleagues will introduce themselves.
So, good morning everyone, my name is Janet Beale. I'm a psychotherapist, counsellor, and I also teach psychology. I've been doing sessional work for the forensic programme, and really over the time have employed quite a lot of the psychology of learning, but also the psychology of forensics into this work. So it's quite a passion for me, because I also work with students from higher education in the therapy world.
And I'm Alex Dorrington, and I'm a third year student, so I'm going to be graduating this year in forensic investigation.
Yay! So she's the expert in the room, really. So just a disclaimer, if any of you think you're going to learn to levitate or anything like that, that's next year's conference. And it's basically, it's supposed to be a fun session. So I personally, the way I see education and students is that we as educators or people involved in education have magical powers that if we use them correctly can really change someone's life. So the idea of Harry Potter is that there's some lessons we can learn and to make it a bit more fun. You guys can sit if you want.
That's okay, we're fine.
So the plan is, it's about inclusivity. So the plan is to look at inclusivity, look at our students and where they come from. Alex has very kindly come in in her own time to do this presentation and give you some of her insights as both a student and a mature student as well. Some psychology theories, they're psychotherapy theories rather than psychology, so they're based on thinking and emotions more so than behaviours and that sort of thing, but it all kind of links together. And then we're going to obviously talk about Harry Potter the whole way through because he's quite awesome, really, for that reason only. So when we're talking about inclusivity, what is inclusive practice? So basically I was thinking about what do we mean by inclusion. In order to be inclusive, we have to know what it is we're including. And I think we're very focused in our society on things like protected characteristics and making sure that we're inclusive of specific characteristics. But I actually think that we miss a trick. And I think that the reason we miss a trick is that we don't possibly have time, one, but also don't focus so much on the individual. We do, and please don't think I'm critiquing or criticising, but I think that since I've become a student psychotherapist, I've got such an insight into how the mind works, and just one model of how the mind works, there's many, that I've started to think about actually how do we include all of the elements of those kind of theories. So for example, personality is a massive thing. Psychology affects everything. It affects whether you're going to attend lectures, it affects whether you're going to be successful, and so on. And so it's such an important thing that's what we're going to be focusing on. Unfortunately, at Christ Church we don't have a sorting hat. So we can't bring our students in and go, okay, we're going to put this hat on you, it's going to figure out what your talents are, what your gifts are, and we're going to put you in a house that nurtures that. We just put everybody in a room and go, do the same to everyone, because to be fair, that's how it is, but it's also because we have limited time and a lot of students, so it's not just about that. But I personally think that we're missing a trick, and one of those things is that, for example, only one of these houses values intellect, and I think we're, as universities, very much set, these are my opinions by the way, very much set up to value intellect and not to so much look at all of the other qualities that somebody may have. So I've got some of the values coming up in a second, so I can clarify that. I think that we have a fantastic approach to education. I think that we reach out to people who wouldn't necessarily come to university, and people who have the talent or have the ability but don't have the background that kind of gets them there naturally. And I just, as someone who was probably intelligent but not doing particularly well with it at school, I have a real passion for that kind of student, because I know that they can make a real difference to their life by nurturing it. I kind of use the cupboard under the stairs analogy, because with things like wine and participation agendas and that sort of thing, we are almost plucking a student out of a very protected, closed environment, in my opinion, and plopping them in the middle of a university and expecting them to know what to do. And that's my own personal experience and view of it, which is why we use the kind of cupboard under the stairs. But we all know, if you're here, I'm assuming you know who Harry Potter is, and we all know that he turned out to be one of the best wizards in the world, but just needed that guidance and so on. Some of the theories I'm going to bring in, this is a sociological theory. So if you are brought up in a specific environment, so whether that's a home environment you're talking about, or whether it's a school environment, or a mixture of both, they tend to go together, you will make your decisions quite early on in life about how life is and how you are as a person, how people will be around you. And a lot of our students, I find, don't have a very good opinion of themselves, don't have a lot of confidence in themselves, don't think they are capable of university, have kind of landed here because of wine and participation and that sort of thing, and quite often they don't have the confidence in themselves. And this is a sociological theory which kind of links to that, which is called habitus, which is where whatever we're experiencing in a younger life, we bring that up through our lives. So we have a specific way of viewing the world, we have a specific way of acting in the world, and that only works well if you're in that environment. But if you're put into a completely different environment, then things can go a bit pear-shaped. And what I mean by this is, how many times, even as a new member of staff, it's not even just students, as a new member of staff, you're in a new place and you haven't a clue what's going on. You kind of think everyone else knows, but actually they don't. They're all panicking on the inside as well. So this is a kind of theory which talks about how our view of the world doesn't necessarily match university, and we have a responsibility as members of staff to help that habitus change. It is something that can change over time, it's not fixed, but we have to do something to help that happen. And I think we've done a lot, but I don't think we've done enough, especially around individuals. The other thing is, and this is my own opinion of habitus, I think there are generational habiti, I don't know, which is, I mean, how many, if you teach students, or in meetings, how many times do you get frustrated because everybody's looking out on their phone or whatever? And we live in a technological age, and I remember at uni, which was 20 years ago, which is scary, the computers were new, they were here. So the people who are at university now, they've lived with computers their entire life. And so why are we kind of batting against this and concerned about it? Why aren't we figuring out how to work with it? How are we going to use it? Because this is what our students have grown up with. That's their natural, their normal, so how can we incorporate that? And I think it's a form of habitus, it's a way of being in the world, which dinosaurs like me don't always get. I'm not a dinosaur, I'm a mini dinosaur, I'm kind of getting to dinosaur ages. So we have this habitus, and then we feel this habitus kind of lives in our head somewhere, who knows? Freud probably knew, but I don't know. And essentially, everything that goes into your head is filtered through all of the filters that are in that habitus. So it might be things like decisions you've made, values that you have, and you'll all be aware of values you have. Fairness and justice is one of mine, criminal justice. Fairness and justice is one of mine. If somebody bunks a queue, I want to throw them out the window. I don't do that because it's not that. But essentially, you filter these things. Meta programs are that it's almost like a computer program. It's how the computer functions, but in your head. Decisions, values, your memories. People who haven't had great experiences in academia may have made the decision, I'm not good at academia. And I see it day in, day out, and I don't agree with what they say, and it takes some time to kind of figure that out. So it gets filtered through, they get some sort of internal representation of it. So this, for example, exams is always a good one for students. Exams bad, not doing exams, hit exams bad, and then that affects their state. So a state would be something like they may be happy to do it, they may be anxious about it, which is a kind of physiological thing, which affects the physiology. So, for example, mental health, their physical health and so on, and also then affects their behaviour. So how many people know of people who have just disappeared off the face of the planet, students who have disappeared, and you're like, where are they? Some people, their behaviour is to run. It's fight or flight, isn't it? It's to run. Some people, their behaviour will be to fight against it, and they're the ones that are in your office that you're going, please go away. I can't take it anymore. Wingardium Leviosa. No, didn't work. So essentially, this is, we've got the habitus, we filter it through, and this is why we all know people are different, and people think differently. This is why. It's because it's filtered through a lot of things that we don't even realise is happening, and a lot of things we don't even realise are there. I work as a therapist, Janet works as a therapist, and the things that come out in a therapy session are things from years ago that I don't even realise are there. So it's about that. So inclusivity, you've got to be thinking, I think, about this kind of process. And then there's this chap here. This is me in the mornings before coffee. So this for me, the symbolism of Voldemort is that negative thing that lives within us, especially I think in this culture, in British culture, where we have a very critical view of ourselves. We have a lot of our students, I would say, but I think as a culture we have a lot less self-belief than some other cultures. If you look at America, they're all going, I'm awesome! That was a really bad accent. And here we're going, if you just watch the X Factor in both countries, completely different. Whereas here we're very critical. And this chap here is the biggest barrier to education, I think, because he lives inside. We never know when he's going to rear his head. Everybody's always anxious waiting for it to happen, and that's my kind of view of Voldemort. He should not be named. So I probably would have died tonight because I named him. But I put little post-its because I ramble, as you can probably tell already, and I put little post-its to remind me to ask the expert to pop things in. So Alex can say whatever she wants about some of the stuff that we've talked about.
Okay, so as a lot of what Sean has said is quite actually relevant to me. I was not academic in the slightest. I didn't have any confidence in myself whatsoever. I came from a background that kind of didn't push me into being academic. It was only until I got into my 20s that I kind of felt that I needed to go into a different route. So when that kind of happened, I kind of got to university. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have any kind of, idea of what university was going to be like, and it kind of shocked me into the way of how it was. And only from speaking to Shauna and growing up and being a more mature student, I wasn't prepared, I wasn't ready. And how can a younger kind of student be expected to also be ready when a mature student isn't themselves?
And one of the reasons I asked Alex to do this today is because she's so, I guess, mature, but she's so open to hearing things that I have talked about some of the theories with her during her degree, and that's helped you to kind of figure some things out, some barriers.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I said, the houses, I moved this away from the other slide, and I shouldn't have done. I should have just kept it there. It doesn't fit here anymore, but anyway, we've all done that. So basically, this is what I was talking about, the different houses. So I think this is where we are as a university. We do value other things, don't get me wrong, but I think as a culture, it's intelligence and knowledge, and sometimes wit, if you're a Harry Potter fan. So I think this is where we are, but we have so many students who would fit into the other houses, not this house. But do we nurture that? Do we actually use those skills? Like, for example, a lot of our students coming from where they're coming from are like the bravery and the courage that takes to do that. They're probably Gryffindors. And actually what we're doing is, you've got here, well done, now learn all this stuff, and that might not be their strength. So I just think there's something in this kind of model, and also obviously there's a bit of social stuff that goes on within a university, a bit of, what's the word, the houses fighting against each other. They're not, this person isn't viewed by this person because they have different values, and so there's a lot of that goes on between students as well. So, as Alex said, we have the elusive letter. I've been waiting for my letter for approximately 20 years now. So I think Royal Mail, they're a bit crap, aren't they? So essentially, at this stage of the year, they've probably got their letter, or they're probably about to get a letter, and then we think that over the summer, most of them are in school. There will be some mature students. Most of them are in school, have just come out of school, which is kind of hand-holdy, and then we stick them on the Hogwarts Express over the summer, and we expect them at the end of the journey to be adults, which is quite an interesting thing, and has always been quite interesting to me, because they're only 2 months older than they were when they left school. So why do we consider them to be adults? And this is something I think we all need to consider. If you think of the Hogwarts journey, for anyone who has seen Harry Potter, there's a lot of discussion that goes on about what Hogwarts is, and it's all rubbish, basically, that they think that they've imagined. And I think that's what happens with students, and me as a student, when I think back to it, is that you don't know a lot of stuff, you just assume things, and you just don't really have a clue what's going on. And I think there's something about this process that we need to be looking at. There is some move towards contacting them in the summer, but the reason I mention this is a concept that Jan is going to tell you about.
Absolutely. It's a concept that is really growing in higher education, and I think it's probably going to be like a new house, a new house for the kind of Harry Potters. It's what we call Kinderholt. So it's where, in a way, we're expecting, when you think of the students that are arriving on platform 9 3/4, or probably 10:30 if you're arriving on Southern trains, that will be the time it is, they arrive in and they're quite young in the kind of way that they're thinking. Now, when they then come into the classroom and they're actually being taught, etc., some of the behaviours that you might witness may not be at the level that you are expecting. Now, this could be an unconscious process for the students because they also are going through changes at the time. And a lot of the biological and physiological changes that we're experiencing may not always be clear to the individual that's feeling it, or for the lecturers and tutors that are experiencing it. Now, we certainly know, going on to Professor here, Professor Linda has been doing some great research on looking at the fact that we are expecting expecting students to come in at the age of 18 and to actually then act as adults. But really and truly, the brain is not yet prepared to be into adulthood to at least around 25. So there's quite a gap that's going on between the ability for the person to mature, and as they're then coming into education, what happens is that responsibility level that you may find if you go out and get a job or get married, etc., is somewhat delayed. So we're expecting all these changes to go on, and what we're finding is that sometimes the two, from education to a person transitioning, is not always meeting in the middle, and this is the difficulty that we're finding. So we're battling from an educational part, and the person is battling in from their kind of growing maturity. So their dark force, bless them, is that kind of expectation of the university, and the dark force from the university is the expectation that they'll get a 1-1. And sometimes meeting those two in the middle is a little bit like having a Harry Potter fight with the wands. It just doesn't happen. So there's going to be a lot of kind of wizardry going on, and a lot of opportunity for the brain to kind of really cause some difficulty. And I know Sean was saying about how behaviours and how things change. This is what's going on. There's wizardry going on. There's dark forces going on. We can't see it, and a person can't always express it, but we need to be aware of it. We need to be aware of the hats that's going on every day of the week, the different houses that they're tuning into. So it's something to think about. Next one.
Just to point out, that's not Professor Luna from Hogwarts.
No. No, there could be.
That's just a really awesome concept.
Concept.
Coincidence.
Now do.
Did you want to say anything? No?
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
say
you
yeah. So, like I said earlier, I came to university at 25. I was not mature in the slightest. First year, I kind of left. I was travelling from Essex to here. So when I left, I just was back to myself, and I was hanging around with a lot of different kind of individuals that I'd grown up with that were still in that immature phase. So I wasn't getting the whole ultimate experience from university. It's only as I moved here in my second year that I kind of had to grow up, be more mature, and actually focus on my studies rather than focusing on everything that was going around me that wasn't linked to university. So that was my experience, in the sense of you can't mature yourself unless you move. You want to, first of all, regardless of your age. I was 25, I'm now 29, and you know, I feel like a completely different person to when I was in first year, because I came here not wanting to kind of really do the university in first year because I didn't know what to expect. As soon as I kind of was like, actually, I really like this experience and I need to try more. I moved here, was away from all my family. That was really hard, so I struggled in my second year. Third year probably was my best year. So,
Yeah.
And that's quite common, I think.
yeah.
And that's a really good point. I mean, thought of that is that so many of our students commute in. They're not immersed in it the way Hogwarts is, if you like. And I certainly found as a student that I stayed at home for free. At my postgrad, I moved away, and it was so much more developing that I was living away from home. But obviously, it has its issues as well. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, just to help you understand it a little bit, all right, let's be brief. As we try to think we're human, we might not be, we might be dobbies, we might be all sorts of different characters underneath all of that, but we all will have a kind of inbuilt inert response to want to survive. Okay? Doesn't matter what you do in life, doesn't matter where you go, even if you go to every seminar today, your need is to survive by going and getting coffee, going and getting tea, going to the loo, etc., etc. They're all survival parts. Okay, so inbuilt within students is that need to survive. Now they will do that by whatever means is right for them. So it may be they might need to withdraw at times. It may be that they need to use humour at times. It may be that they're on their phone at times. In that connection with home while they're feeling anxious and scared is a connection. Okay, so they will survive in whatever way that they expect to do, and will keep them safe. But we are human, and there's certainly a lot of different kind of methods that we use and methodologies that we use to understand that. That survival even goes right way back to kind of Stone Age. We will survive in the way that is right for us. It's not always the way that meets the curriculum. So it's a different way of looking at it.
I think that we don't realise that. So when people are frightened about doing presentations, we're like, what's wrong with you? Just take a deep breath, it'll be fine. But actually what's going on at the core of that is, I won't survive this. And survival is one of the key things. The other thing is that people need to belong, and one of the key reasons for people leaving university or not doing well, not engaging in university, is that they don't feel like they belong to their peer group. So there's work. I know there's a lot of work going on around that thing as well.
So just thinking, any of you have ever done Maslow? Okay, brilliant triangle. I'm just going to bring it in quickly. We expect, in a way, students to arrive, whether they are staying on campus or not, and actually start for themselves to build all of this triangle. Okay, so they come from home, they come from a protected area, they've come from being supplied with food maybe, and all the things that go on, and all of a sudden the basic needs are down to them. Okay, homing-wise, eating, paying bills, getting food, etc., etc. They're also in an unknown territory, so the safety starts to kick in. Am I safe? Do I like this person? Do I like that tutor? All starts to build. Love and belonging, friendships that start to grow. Some are good, some are toxic. Okay, you get that everywhere. You cannot, as lecturers, separate those two relationships. It has to be the person that does that, but you can see that going on, unfortunately. Getting up to the self-esteem, which is what we hope to as lecturers and so on, but for a person who's come from a very kind of difficult background, that might take an entire 3 years to get to. Okay, so you can't expect that straight away. And what we ask for, and what we look a lot in therapy, is that somebody then self-actualizes. That's not a Harry Potter trick or a ring ride or whatever. It's that somebody reaches their potential. Okay? But at any time, if something gets knocked off along that way, it can destabilize a person's way of feeling and way of being grounded. So that triangle is really important to think about. Are your students okay? Are they looking after themselves? All these things build to that kind of higher achievement. Okay. I'm doing it quickly because I know we should
That's
want
all right.
to. Okay. All right. So certainly as humans, or whichever way you want to look at it, any time that we get a thought that comes into our head, okay, it will then make us feel in a way, and that will then kind of affect what we do. So there's an action that goes around, and you can hit it at any time. You might think about what you're going to do, and then it's a thought, and then it's a feeling. You might feel something very sad, and it's a thought, and it's a feeling. It goes round and round and round. And this is how things affect us. So if you think, as Shauna was saying, that you're not going to achieve, your feelings then may be one of sadness, disappointment, letting people down, and then after that your behaviour may be quite difficult in a way that you might withdraw.
And for some people, it goes the other way, so it's feel, think. So, for example, it's called your open door, the way you interact with the world most often, the most comfortable way. I'm a thinker, I think everything through. Jan's a feeler, and so which basically means the first thing she will do in response to an event is feel something, whereas the first thing I'll do is think. So we often find ourselves going, what is going on with you? And that's because she's going, I need my feelings to be acknowledged, and I'm going, come on, think, which is quite an interesting dynamic, the two of us. But if you've got a student whose open door, or the way of experiencing the world, is feeling, what we are is a left-brained institution, aren't we? So we go, come on, think it through. Not obviously like that, because that would be a bit scary. But that tends to be what we do. And actually, that student sometimes needs their experience to be acknowledged first. And quite often that's all that's needed, an acknowledgement of how difficult it is for them. So these are just some examples of the thoughts, feelings, and behaviours type cycles. So this is one where it's kind of like a cycle of, I'm stupid, I can't do this exam, whereas this one's more if somebody has a feeling that they're smart, then it will create a different, I thought that they're smart, that will create a different feeling, and this one is one that I see in very few of my students, but they should all be thinking this because they all have the ability, so it's quite interesting. And then you've also got this all being linked to defence mechanisms, so one of the best ones is denial, is that when something happens, or university is overwhelming and is going to pretend it doesn't exist. For people who are academic staff, for example, that would be marking for you. For people who are perhaps professional service or other staff, it might be reports, I don't know. There's all sorts of things that we're made to do that we're just like, oh. So, but there are a lot of things. The other interesting one is projection, and this is where recently we've had students saying, I'm not happy with my mark, it needs to be remarked. It's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. And actually what they're doing is projecting. They're angry at themselves, but they're projecting it onto you because it's a lot easier to do that than actually accept that you've not done very well. So we're coming to the end of our time, and we've got about 4,212 more slides. But we're going to cut them short.
2013.
I'm excited. Harry Potter's awesome. So we'll just do one more model. So the idea was to give you a taster of things so that you can then go off, or I'm quite happy, I'm full-time staff and Jan's sessional, so she's not always around, but I'm quite happy to meet you for a coffee or something like that if you want to get some guidance or anything like that. This is about drivers. We're all driven by a certain thing. And by understanding somebody's driver, you can help them. Okay? So, for example, Alex has a Please Others driver. Do you want to tell people about your Please Others driver?
So I will constantly put everybody else's needs before mine, especially my family's. And that did make me suffer quite actually a lot, especially when I lived with them, because my mum was very ill at the time. So I was literally constantly focusing on my mum, my family, making sure everybody was all right. I still do it now, but because they live in Somerset, it's easier to block them on Facebook so they can't contact me. And I do that. Just so that I can kind of get on with my own life and do well and focus on myself. Whereas if I'm there and I'm kind of consumed by everything that they what they're doing, I kind of have that feeling projected onto me. So if they're feeling down, I'll feel down. You know, so I was always constantly focusing on everybody else's feelings. If someone's upset, I'm upset, and I have to try and make it better for everybody else. And I won't focus on myself. I could be doing something so terribly wrong in uni or in life, and I'll put my focus on somebody else to make sure they're all right before myself.
So a driver is something, again, you learn when you're very young by what you interact with. So your student that won't submit anything to you is possibly to be perfect. Well, they might not have done it, obviously. But I have students who are excellent students who just won't submit it, and it's because it's never going to be perfect enough. So they may have a drive that everything has to be perfect. And these students also are very critical of staff and the programme as well. So it's about understanding that that's their process, that's what they do, and actually we can work with that. The hurry up people will fill their diary full. So if you're somebody whose diary is filled from night to day, it's quite possible you have a hurry up, because you're only okay if you have a lot to do, you do everything right now this minute. And or if something comes in, which quite often I'll be doing a report, something comes in, I go, oh, I better deal with that. That's a hurry up driver, because you just need to deal with everything right now. This is one of the most common ones in our societies. Be strong, don't feel anything. Be strong, don't show you're struggling. And that's, again, from tutorials with students, you realise phenomenal things are going on in their life, and they haven't even mentioned it, because you don't show that you've got a weakness, you don't show that you're struggling. So the students that disappear off, that don't make contact, that don't ask for help, they have Be Strong driver.
Do you encounter many students that are a combination?
Absolutely. I was just about to say that at the end. And the tryhards are told to try hard but don't succeed. I'm a tryhard. I never finish anything. Everyone in the room probably already knows that. so from now on, if I haven't finished something for you, I'm just going to go try hard. But it's the way you're hardwired. It's not something you can change easily. And we tend to have two of these that are preferable to us, that are most common in our behaviours, but we can do all of them, and we do a mixture of all of them. But it's just, again, a taster of, this is going on in the background. And if you're, for example, if your student is late and you're Be Perfect, and you're like, what? Late? They might be a hurry up, and they may have 3,000 things in their diary, and that's why they're late. So it's just an insight. So that's to give you some kind of insight into the some of the psychology. There was other things, but obviously we didn't judge it properly. Essentially, it's about being aware of things like that, being conscious of it. I'm not suggesting we all become psychotherapists, because one, a lot of people don't want to, and two, we don't have time, quite frankly. And it's also about applying this stuff to yourself and being kind to yourself about things as well. But also, it's about avoiding this kind of unconscious bias that we all talk about. I don't know if anyone noticed that the colours were constantly Gryffindor colours. Yeah, because Gryffindor, I'm Gryffindor. The fact that I say that is quite sad, but anyway. But we can have this unconscious thing going on that we don't even realise we're doing at all. And then just the final slide, finish with this, is the characters of Harry Potter. I think are a perfect way of suggesting it. So at the start of an academic career, perhaps they need us to do what we're told. Not what we're told, because that's not going to happen, but perhaps when they ask for something, we need to think about whether we should do that for them, and to really kind of help them along. Hagrid I see as the gentle giant, the one that whispers, you need to go and do this, you need to go and do that, and so on, but is more independent and gives a lot of the general information, not the subject-specific knowledge, if you like. And then as you kind of progress, you've got McGonagall or some of the tutors who have fantastic kind of knowledge and power, and these are the guys in particular, I think, that have power to change a student's view of themselves, because they interact with them on a daily basis. But this is around the student becoming more independent, but still having that challenge and that tough love, I guess McGonagall does, but a little bit more independent and trusting the student more to do it themselves. And then the final bit, I always think of Harry and Dumbledore being equals in that he was treated as an equal, because he was at the same level as Dumbledore in his skill. And so, I mean, it's just a way of thinking about how we actually work with students. And you don't have to wear any of the outfits. You can just wear your own clothes, that's fine. So I think we'll leave it there. Because with my hurry up driver, I put too many slides in. So if anybody has any questions or wants to discuss, come and speak to us or give me an email and I'll be quite happy to meet up with you. I hope you enjoyed it.